The story begins with the Grim Reaper and Crossbones chasing Captain America and Iron Man in the Quinjet all over New York City. Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, is steering the Quinjet, struggling to hit the enemy aircraft, and complains to Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, about their ship's targeting system. The enemy aircraft later makes its move and latches itself on the Quinjet. When the hatches open, it reveals a one-on-one shoot-down between Iron Man and Crossbones. Their shooting has compromised the Quinjet's stabilizers, and it is headed for a crash landing in Central Park. Captain America jumps out of the aircraft and secures the citizens when he is hit from behind by Reaper. After a snarky comeback, Iron Man gets hit by a device that also took him out. Captain America regained consciousness, but it was too late as Crossbones had abducted Iron Man and escaped with their aircraft. Crossbones and Reaper return to an abandoned warehouse and drag an unconscious Iron Man. Reaper wonders why Crossbones is getting paranoid, explaining that he worries about the unexpected. He claims that they might make it work as long as they stick to the plan and keep the surprises to a minimum. As they enter the building, the doors automatically open themselves and an elevator pops up. They later drag the unconscious Iron Man into the elevator to an underground lab, where they come face to face with Red Skull. Grim Reaper wonders if an Avenger for a prisoner is enough to get them to join his group. It was later revealed that they were on a submarine when Red Skull ordered his men to launch the sub. Crossbones worries that they were taken off the land with no escape, when Reaper explains that it doesn't matter whether it's a volcano base, a space station, or a submarine. While second-guessing their decision to join, Red Skull calls out MODOK and wonders if their so-called prisoner is real. MODOK confirms it's the real Iron Man and suggests checking inside the armor. Reaper says they have already tried, which will be challenging to crack. MODOK gets furious when Reaper claims to be the same scientific expert as him. Crossbones asks Reaper if he is sure that the armor is on lockdown, to which he responds that he is not Tony Stark and would not know anything about it. When MODOK uses his technopathic abilities to get a read into Iron Man's armor, he confirms that Tony Stark embedded neuron inhibitors into the armor. MODOK claims that there is more than one way to crack an egg, in this case, Iron Man's suit. When MODOK forcibly pried the armor open, it shot lasers at him, to which he was taken aback. Iron Man speaks up and claims Reaper and Crossbones locked his armor when they tried to open it themselves. When Crossbones gives him a look, Reaper explains that he did try to warn MODOK. MODOK is furious and demands they bring Iron Man to his lab so he can rip his armor apart piece by piece. Red Skull compliments them and claims that they may have room for them both in his Cabal. Red Skull explains that the Avengers are said to face threats together where no single hero can. Hence, he thought it would be fitting for their greatest foes to work together to destroy them. He then brings them to a hangar showing weapons and tanks they have amassed to go against the Avengers. Crossbones claims that this was bigger than they both could have imagined. Red Skull declares it is a breathtaking task building an army unlike any the world has ever seen. Crossbones and Grim Reaper suddenly ask him too many questions, like how many troops do they have, what are they paying him, and what fuel source do they use on the sub. Red Skull claims that these are rather sophisticated questions for mere foot soldiers. Crossbones and Reaper are suddenly insulted for being treated as foot soldiers. When they take out and bring Iron Man to them, suddenly a couple of vampires appear out of thin air and ask Red Skull who they are. Reaper suddenly kicks one of them, to which Crossbones is confused why he impulsively attacked the vampire. He explains that they don't work well with vampires because they can take over anyone they bite. More vampires show up, and when one of them pins Reaper to the ground, Crossbones comes up from behind, saving him. When Reaper tries to attack the vampires with his weapon, it doesn't work. Red Skull explains that MODOK has placed a security protocol on the submarine, which dampens all the tech and renders all weapons useless on the sub. He believes it helps keep everyone on their best behavior, while explaining that further hostilities between members will be dealt with severely. The vampires retreat, but not before claiming that Dracula will be hearing of this outrage. Grim Reaper is shocked to find out that Dracula is part of the Cabal, to which Red Skull claims that they have no idea of the power they have amassed. to face the Avengers. Suddenly an alarm goes off and Red Skull explains that their guest has arrived. Crossbones wonders who it is, given that they are 2,000 feet underwater. Later they meet Attuma, the so-called warlord of Atlantis, who returns after promising to retrieve a powerful weapon. Red Skull assures him that everything has gone according to plan. He then orders Reaper and Crossbones to watch Attuma's men and claims that should the weapon do as Attuma promised, their war with the Avengers will end today. Meanwhile, at the lab, MODOK continues to work on Iron Man's armor while talking to himself, claiming that there isn't a technology that Tony Stark can build that he cannot undo. After having drained the energy from the armor, MODOK finally opens it to find it empty, except for Tony Stark's rather embarrassing photo of his behind. MODOK claims that they were tricked and shouts in outrage. Attuma's men suddenly claim they are hungry and demand that Crossbones and Reaper bring them food. Insulted by being forced to serve them, they ready themselves for a fight when MODOK shows up on the intercom claiming that Crossbones and Reaper have betrayed them. He orders the soldiers to bring them to his lab immediately. Captured, they unmask them both to reveal Steve Rogers and Tony Stark, pretending to be Crossbones and Grim Reaper. Steve breaks free and takes out Attuma's men. Tony wonders if he could have done that before they forcibly unmasked them. Steve claims that Tony had already done that when he tried to shock MODOK with his armor, when he tried to pry it open. Tony claims it was all for establishing credibility and explains that Tony Stark would never let anyone touch his armor without giving them a 20,000-volt iron slap. Steve claims that Tony's enjoying way too much with the role-playing while calling out for reinforcements and ordering the Avengers to assemble. When no one was responding, Tony tries his communication chip, but it too was not working, and he suspects something is blocking the card's transmission. With no reinforcements, Tony suggests getting his armor, but even that he could not manage. Tony hacks into the enemy computer to discover that the enemy surrounds them and has no way out. Steve suggests escaping through the aquaport or fighting to the communication center to call for help. Tony tells otherwise and claims he can hack into MODOK's tracking system to sneak into his lab and get his armor back. Steve claims that there is no time, but Tony insists that there is always a time when they are suddenly outnumbered. When Red Skull and Attuma walked into the room, Steve Rogers and Tony Stark were nowhere to be found, with Attuma's men beaten up and on the ground. Furious, Red Skull orders his men to search the sub while the Atlanteans search outside the ship. Attuma claims that his men only take orders from him. Red Skull calls him to tell his men when Attuma speaks up and tells Red Skull to watch his tongue, given that his so-called submarine is floating in his ocean. After witnessing Red Skull and Attuma going at each other's throats, Tony claims their so-called Cabal isn't as close as Red Skull claimed. Steve claims it's a familiar scene given that they are arguing about decision differences. Back at the Avengers Tower, Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, has been pretending to be Captain America to have everyone fooled with their undercover mission, to which Natalia Romanoff, aka the Black Widow, calls out his bad Cap impression. Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon, has been checking on Captain America and Iron Man's location when he explains that they suddenly moved as if they were on an underwater transport and lost their signals altogether. Natasha claims they should have sent her given she's an actual spy. But Clint explains that Crossbones and Reaper's outfits wouldn't fit her. Sam suggests linking up with S.H.I.E.L.D. to try to track them, when Clint suggests having Hulk and Thor interrogate Crossbones and Reaper. Back on the submarine, Tony suspects that MODOK's power dampener is mainly activated by the black box on his forehead. He believes that he can reactivate his armor if they can shut it down. Steve claims they don't have time for that and should focus on sending a signal to their team. When they are suddenly distracted by the weapon, Attuma brought on board, claiming to be powerful enough to end the war today. Worried about a mass weapon of destruction, Tony and Steve are later discovered by the enemy. With no weapons, Steve and Tony run away from their pursuers when they decide to fight back. Steve hoisters Tony on the back of an armored robot, which then Tony uses against their comrades. When they thought they had cleared the room, vampires suddenly appear from the vents. Tony has a snarky remark about being happy to see vampires and save him from one of Steve's lectures. Steve then fights the vampires, throwing one of them to the window, where the Atlanteans outside discover where they are. Tony had the brilliant idea of breaking the glass to let the water in to distract the vampires and make their escape before Red Skull and the others arrived. Red Skull is furious as Steve and Tony continue to keep eluding them. MODOK assures him that they will eventually capture them, given that Tony Stark is useless without his armor, much like him. Red Skull is insulted and claims that no one's place is secure in the Cabal, suggesting that even MODOK is dispensable. Suddenly, his men inform him that they had managed to break free the trident from the gunk it first came in. Tony and Steve have hidden in the vents and overheard their conversation, worrying that their improv fighting might not work out till the end. Tony admits that Steve's idea to infiltrate the Cabal was excellent, for they would not have known about how serious this Cabal was. Tony explains that without his armor, all he could do is improvise. Unlike Steve, even without his shield, he's still built as a fighter. When Tony is about to put himself down, Steve claims he's one of the most intelligent men in the world, and that the Avengers are lucky to have him. Red Skull has his hands on Neptune's trident, said to be a weapon of the gods with the power of the ocean itself. He declares that the Avengers will fall, while all nations shall tremble before him. Tony suggests getting captured so they can get close enough to MODOK to destroy the black box on his forehead that controls the tech dampeners. Red Skull uses the trident's powers, but it is too strong that it ruptures the hull and water comes rushing in. Red Skull then controlled the water to restrain Tony and Steve. While Red Skull claims to have control of water and is made as a weapon for the Cabal, Steve suddenly punches Tony, making it seem like they have an internal conflict. They made it seem like they were fighting, but were just putting the seeds of conflict between the Cabal members. It didn't take long before Red Skull, Attuma, and MODOK fought over the trident. While they're distracted, Steve grabs a shield he used to attack MODOK and the black box, turning down the power dampeners. Tony says he needs 5 seconds to activate his armor and asks Steve to stall them. Even with his armor on, Red Skull claims it's already too late for him when he suddenly uses the trident to create a massive octopus-like monster to attack them. Attuma takes the trident away from Red Skull, but Steve manages to steal it from them and break it into 2. Attuma claims that their actions have angered the ocean itself on them, which creates a massive whirlpool that pulls the submarine towards it. Iron Man tears a hole through the submarine to escape the whirlpool, but it was too strong for his armor, and his armor was forced to shut down. As they fell back into the whirlpool, Steve said not to worry, as he immediately called on the Avengers the minute the power dampeners were down. Hulk catches Steve while Thor retrieves Tony. Back on the Quinjet, Natasha wonders how Steve and Tony could have survived with each other, as they usually have opposing priorities. Tony claims that he learned it is crucial to have a plan, while Steve says he learned to trust his gut more. The end. Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos, and please make sure to subscribe and tap the bell to be notified about our latest videos. See you next time.